a regular Cardston Town Council meeting. We have Councillor Grainger on Zoom, and we have a councillor that, for personal reasons, Councillor Kenny cannot be with us. So we have a call to order, and we will do a land acknowledgement. That the town of Cardston acknowledge that we are located on traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory. We have an agenda, councillors. Suppose you have looked at it. Is there anything that needs to be added to that? No? Councillor Brown, do you want to add up the agenda?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda on the 14th day of November 2022.
Thank you very much. And we will recognize that we have Channel 32, Sammy McCarthy, and we have a delegation with Donna Lisa and Kronen that are going to come here. We need to do thank you very much. Donna and Doug, if you want to come forward, I'm sorry I don't see you very well. Welcome to council. I know we always talk in money.
Always, everything comes down to money.
And yeah, it's painful to you, it's painful to me too. Go ahead.
Well, really, we've been invited here by town council, so we're wondering. I mean, we've got all sorts of things we can tell you about. But you know, what's your question?
Okay. If you want to do the meeting in that manner,
I don't know. I know.
Okay.
She would love to share some facts about the library.
All right.
This is a writing tool.
Okay.
We get 24 of these weekly from within March, cover all the matters and the people in our community. 24 of these unpacked and content and who's requested it. So that's really significant. And it takes a lot of space, it takes a lot of staff time, but we have a simple demographic. We have a very young community that's well educated and really parents with early literacy. However, we also have a very vibrant senior community as well. We do two outreaches, one to Schmidt Foundation and one to Lee Crest. We go to each place every other week to manage their library needs because they have mobility issues, of course. Not all of them are able to get on the handy bus. There's some of those that are in wheelchairs or have just balance issues. So I'm really pleased that we have created that program for them too. We offer different programs in 3 different sessions. We have a winter spring, 2 6 sessions in that period of time. In the summer, we have summer sport, and that's actually our STEAM time. Science, technology, STEM, engineering, and math. And then in the fall, we used to have 2 6, but we've narrowed that down to 1 9-week session. All are very well attended. Within the 5 weeks that we did our summer sessions this year, we had 714 participants, which is huge. And just Jeff asked before that he reports about how many teachers we have in our community. 100 people have library cards. Back in February, when at the very beginning of 2023, I reported to Jeff that we had just a little over 800. Now we're closer to 1,000. So just from February to October, we've gained almost 100 new users. In a period of time when people ask, our library worthwhile? Our library is well used. Our demographic and our statistics don't just compete with Mr. Pass and Grass, Mr. Pass Cityman. We compete with Tabor, and our little population of library users competes with that city that has what? I would say 3 times our population. It's really significant. If you have any specific questions about programming and other things that we offer, I'd be happy to add to those. The other manage is manage a little bit of finance, and she's been part of the library since way before I was here. I was here in 2007, but Deborah's been here since 2014.
You know what? Thank you Thanks so much, Donna, and I see the passion in your eyes and the passion in your voice, and that is a wonderful thing because there is definitely a need for a library in our town. We all recognize that. As council, because we at the time of budget, for us, the budget is always a question that is important to our taxpayer, because that is through the amount of requisition, this is how we have to kind of figure out how later we're going to tax or keep them or whatever, considering that there is so many other pieces where everything goes up. And post-COVID, I don't know what happened, but there is, it's a little bit crazy in terms of inflation everywhere. So my question to you would be something of that sort. I looked at your 10-year kind of requisition. And so in 2013, the requisition was at 16,000 plus, around there. This year, over last year, you are in an increase of $1,000, and you are at $265,000 right now, plus. So when I look at it from the years, you had 3 years where your requisition went down because you did not have the same need of staffing, and I totally. So maybe can you help us understand from last year to this year the need for $20,000, because over 10 years it was $50,000, but this year only is $20,000 of that $50,000. So help me understand.
Okay, well, the budget we submitted came with a cover letter that kind of explains that 20,000. Most 17 of it is lighting. And we've got, I'm pretty sure this building was built with spare parts. I was a general contractor. So they told that the lighting needs replaced, and we were trying to get grant money to replace all the lighting to LED lighting. We've got quite a bit of lighting in the basement, and it needs replaced regardless. It's just, it's failed. So, and it's where we can have a dark down there in the winter, a short day light. So we know we've got that project for sure coming up. It would be several $1,000s. So we got a quote to do the entire building for $17,000 to switch everything over to LED lights. And this goes back to Jeff, who had said, we're hoping the town finds a grant out there. And that's, I thought I put in the cover letter that if the town gets a grant, we don't need that increase from you. Like, it would be offset by the grant instead. Really, our increase is only about $3,000 over the current year, or the prior year, as far as current operations would go. We're very careful about trying to save where we can. Some expenses are fixed, our utilities, our insurance, those, those kind of things we all have. Wages are staff pretty much on minimum wage. They get their little 2% every year. We've got some who've been there for 10 or 12 years, and so they're at a whopping $21 an hour.
So my question to you would be maybe, how do you plan for yourself with a capital project when you kind of plan 5 years down the line? Do you have any kind of long-term vision for the need for your building, or is it something that we need to help you with to kind of try to understand what the building is going to need for upgrade, renovation, whatever, so that for ourselves we understand where we're going in terms of helping the library to be a sustainable building. So that we have the same issue.
We did a building like we set aside $5,000 a year. I've been paying $5,000 for zero inflation in it for years for assets, and there's always a computer in there, so about $1,500 every year. It's just we replace one computer. It just needs to be done every year, so that eventually 7 or 8 are done in there. And then we try and set whatever we don't spend on capital assets, we do set it aside, knowing that that's kind of our first stop, or if we've got a big repair or a capital item. Like last year, we did the air conditioners. but we had that money kind of, we had those questions on COVID, to be honest. There was, COVID lasted, and so we used that money to, we could have come to the town and said, we thought this big repair, but we had the cash, so we used it for the building. As far as looking what big projects are, like, I can't see all of them. We've talked to the town about flashing that needs.
Yes, and they have fixed that on the outside of the building, up by the chimney. That's been repaired.
I thought it was this metal around
The big shop.
that's all. Yeah, I'm sorry. It is, I missed that one.
No, so,
But there's
that's
some
something
big things,
for us,
like,
yeah.
we don't, the building was built in 2005, finished in 2000. We don't have any major repairs that we know of. Like, as soon as we see them, we try and get them into our budget. We can say we're gonna leave it for next year so that we can, we can get little grants for, like, the $5,000 grant for some furnishings that we're able to do for the children's area. And that's separate from the town. So
We just want to have a casual conversation regarding that, because in all honesty, from all the requisition we have, the library is the biggest requisition we have.
it's a whole other building.
Right. So that is something important to us to understand. Is there something we can do different, better, more efficient? I don't know. Is that something that is worth looking at from a perspective of operation? I do not know. We're trying to do that with other things, for example, with all of the facility we had that was a fire requisition, where we kind of looked into, is there a different way to do operation without compromising the program, without compromising all that, right? Because we know what you're offering, and we know it's what we see.
Like, we don't want to those hundreds of kids who come for children's program. We don't want to charge a fee for that.
But goes back to what you said initially, though. There's only probably a handful, like 4 or 5 categories that can be modified. The rest, I can't.
Yeah, you have fixed expenses like we have. We have them too.
Our flexible things are supplies, children's programming, hours and staffing, absolutely. You can set hours. You cannot do Saturdays. You can't have Saturdays. You can't have Saturdays. Like that one comes and goes. Sometimes depending on funding, depending on staffing. Sometimes depending on traffic. If it's being used, we cut it for a year or two because we weren't getting the foot traffic. So why have that expense? But it's used now. So.
Councillor Burton, Councillor Brown. But thank you for the service you offer. Trust me, we appreciate it. When $2 is it's always a painful time for us all.
You're dealing with decisions that were made by a prior council years ago in building that building. And it took them years to get, I think I'm long enough to know that, to get to that point of building that building. Is it the best location? Well, in the end, it's the only one we got. So, some talk up there because it's there now, so we have to insure it properly. The utilities probably aren't too much money, but it's a good building. It's got the facilities that we need. You have a chance in the library.
Councillor Burton.
So, as far as the library, and my kids have used the library tremendously. And none of my questions are loaded, they're all honestly want to know questions. Keep track of actually come into the facility.
And so would you like that? Yeah, I brought that with me. I can share that with you.
Commissioner's Arch uses that.
I need to have a people counter right at the front door because I needed to track that. We are probably one of the most audited facilities for statistics, so we have to count everything. So of course we count people. 25,053 people visit the library in 2022. 25,000 foot traffic.
What was that rate?
I'm going to tell you that in just a second. So that's what we mean when we went back to the statistics and check out for those people that came through. equals 154 items leaving the library every day for a year.
The items, my kids would have had 20 each, or whatever the limit is.
They could do.
So what's the?
But not everybody does.
People per day, do you know?
I could get, this is the grand total of all everyday count, and I could get the people count of every day. Because we've gone through that and looked at what days have more people coming through than others, and we're needing to cut a day.
That's actually where I was headed, we haven't discussed
So
that.
I have that information. I didn't bring that detail with me, but we do have access to
Are there
that.
times of day, and
Not
examples?
times of day, no, the day as a whole.
The total hours for the library are
About from 10 to 6, Monday through Friday, 12 to 3 on Saturday.
it's hard to close it during the midday, but.
I mean, yeah, if you were at a grocery store, you'd say, well, does it make sense to stay open past whatever? You know what I mean? Because sometimes you can keep the same business compressing the hours.
But we would be totally able to do that. Sometimes Sharp recommends other libraries that don't have a people counter to take that count for a week. If we could do that, we could break it down into time periods. If we do a manual count because we use our computers,
That might be helpful if you were analyzing what the mayor said, if you were looking at places you could save money. The question that I have, just on the information I was provided, and I don't know the exact information, but on your expenses, because I'll just read it to you. It says salaries, CPPI, it's the library board, steps for wages and benefits for library manager, that's paid by the town. And then it has a separate heading. And on the first page, with the green stripe down it. And then, self-explanatory. Then there's another heading, administrative expenses for 19, well, this year 123. But also included in admin, it's not wages.
Oh, okay, did you end up forwarding them all 3 pages of?
Yes.
Okay, so the expenses, the different, the admin expenses, 123. So if you go to your 3rd page of what hopefully you will see, library expenses in 5 categories. Okay, and then you got your salaries, you got your administrative, you got your materials. You get to come to that total. So within administrative, there are a lot of categories, and some of them, that's where the utilities and the. So there's a specific item within that that you want to know about.
Okay. And then another question. It looks like if you take your income, so the fines, letter fees, pickup, laminating, printing, book sales, fundraising, and donations, if I include all the income, it's not grants or from the town.
Right. And it's how much?
It's about 4.5%. So, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, other recreational facilities regrettably run about 60%. Town is kind of short 40%. Sometimes we can recover all of it. 4.5 is just so dramatically different from everything else.
The library is different. Like,
But what is it different? I can say what's different about it. So if the swimming pool is 62, and this is 4.5, that's why I started saying, well, something must be wrong somewhere.
there is something wrong. We were thrilled to get a $10,000 increase in the product. Talk to your product. Last year they gave you 25.
Excluding grants.
I know that, but that's. So are you willing to pay $100 to grow a library card?
That's what I'm asking. Again, these aren't loaded questions.
Right, I know, but
These
that's
are
those are
loaded
questions we've asked as a board, like, what are people looking for?
4.5 is collapsed from different things, say 60 or 100.
We're on a recreational board, right? But if you want me to go fundraise for, as a board
I'm
member.
not asking you to bring me, I'm asking for information.
Right.
Are there things that we could do to increase it from 4.5% to somewhere closer to?
Looking at the types of categories that we have for
5%.
services, there's I mean, there's book sales. We used to have a fundraising for around town and got various people that sponsor magazines. But we don't have magazines anymore. That is gone. And so there's no, it just covered that cost. So we decided not to. People are willing to pay for something specific, but they're not going to give $100 just to operate library. We want a donation fee. But if they're sponsoring something, they will. And so when we got rid of the magazine, we got rid of the sponsorship that was tied with that. But it just covered that cost. It wasn't. We're no further behind or ahead by losing that type of funding.
Other things that other libraries, some of the smaller ones, include friends of the library board that go to casinos. Our library board is elected not to participate in the casino plans. But as the thing I also look forward to, Jeff, and I don't know if you've already, but what our board does is what you direct them to do. I mean, you ultimately have the power to direct our board. Feel would be more efficient. But libraries do a lot of it. Some libraries have what you call a Christmas market. Libraries have a Christmas market within the library. But are we taking that profit away from someone within our community? In our community, does that impact someone's income for us to do that? In our small community, that might impact someone's livelihood. I'm not sure. Unless that's something the town would like the library to do to increase our revenue or our income. There are some things to do, but it's really contingent upon us not wanting to take that away. Us being a charitable organization, let's just take. I can see why that's a dilemma for our board to choose to choose something that someone else is relying on to support their family.
Councillor.
First of all, my kids lived at the library, as you can attest, and worked there and loved it, and were in all the programming, and I can't say enough good things about the library. I want it to be known that every manager in the last couple weeks has been asked to come and report to council. So please don't take this that you're being put on the spot and because that's not the intent. The intent was there's nothing better. I mean, we love Councillor Jensen and she does a great job reporting, but there's something wonderful about looking at the two of you, and because Deb, you know exactly what this is, and Donna, you know the people and the numbers. So I think that's really important to know. That's why we wanted you here. That was the request.
But this conversation is important too, because we need to know how you can help us.
I agree. So here's my question. I had a few, but you asked them, so thank you. So I got my numbers. My last one was the casinos, actually, because that's like $30,000. I mean, I had kids in girls' choir. I mean, a few of us have, and soccer, and by the friends of the library supporting that, you're not taking away anybody's job or anything in our community. You are lessening the load on the taxpayer, because the more we make from those taxes, the more we make from those winnings, right, the casino winnings, it gets put back or lighting, whatever you get for it.
So is the town supportive of all organizations forming friends societies? Because the library can't do a casino.
No, but the friends can.
We would have to form a friend. So we're 3 years away then. I just formed one for the junior high a couple of years ago. For you. Okay. So 3 years getting a casino, but it's going to come around. Those 3 years are going to come around no matter what.
I think personally,
years ago the town didn't want the library to do this, but again, different.
So personally, and I can only speak for myself, but I think doing it will lessen the load on our taxpayer and give you more for what you need to use it for. And so I personally would be in support of it. That's what I can tell you.
You know what I was referring to. I understand. Of
course. Yeah, Pam hasn't at Freddy's, and so she would probably, you're right, you're 100% right.
And when we bring, and even now, if we make copies and fax them to scanning fees, charge more than values red market, to report them back to values red market, but they making a call, I'm doing that.
But I also think it's important, you are a business. The library is a business, and we do,
You don't have a
unfortunately,
business license.
but you still run it.
Those kind of things.
Right? You still, I mean,
On anyone else's field,
that's
they
right.
can't read a book.
Absolutely.
They can't afford a library card. And that is just socially morally wrong for you.
But we still have to pay,
But
to
they
get the license.
photocopy and
I agree. Absolutely.
whatever.
Anyway, so that was just my question. I would support going down that road, and I realize talking 6 years away, but I think, or 3 years down, whatever. But I personally think that we should be headed that way. I think we need to be looking wherever there is funding. Because the government does nothing but
province
cut.
about that, because we're also under the Alberta Library Grant.
And I don't know.
And we, we'll look into that. We
Yeah.
have to find a board to be willing to do that, which has to probably be separate from our own board.
Okay.
But
Going with that idea, maybe it could be a ad hoc committee, for example. A ad hoc committee would mean there would be members from the library, members of the council, working together to try to find those kind of efficiencies.
we can get permission from the Alberta government or however from the permission, but find out that it's fine, because there's some legislation that other recreational groups don't have.
Right.
Recreation.
I'm sure that Jeff could maybe help us with that.
And I have.
You have one. Library Grant.
But again, thank you.
So I have two comments. One is that I talked to Donna about fundraising and suggested that perhaps we put someone on our board that is over fundraising. The focus would be fundraising. I think it'd be a great idea, but that's a library board decision.
Right. And we can add that to our agenda for our January meeting.
And secondly, and I know it's a sore spot to even mention or breathe, but because Minister McIver mentioned that it is the responsibility of the library to negotiate funding with other people. And I know that AB Munis, we petitioned them and won for them to negotiate with the government on that as well. So my question or thoughts, I want to know what this council Jeff has opinion on, is should the library be sending a letter or trying to get a meeting with other groups to see if they are interested in funding, or do we just leave it with the AB Munis? Knowing that it is in writing from Minister McIver to have the responsibility on the library to negotiate. So, what are your thoughts?
Referring to a group of 25% of the people that use the library are in that other group, whichever direction I'm pointing.
Be clear.
I was going to say, we spent 2 years, I spent 2 years with the mayor and Councillor, so banging our head against the wall, trying to get them to see why it was imperative for them to forming more, but they refused to. And I'd love for you to go out there, ask, request for a meeting with their board, and then present to them like what you're telling us right now. For us to get the same amount of money as done with Mill Spring is ridiculous. I don't care if the county guys don't like what I'm saying, but that's totally ridiculous. On this side of a budget that we know their residents are using every day, and that's all they can come up with. So.
Can I just say, my interest wouldn't be to request, and there again, it would be a library board decision, but I think that, with inflation and whatnot, if they could bump it even $10,000, $20,000.
And we have done presentations, up to the point when this council started legal, I don't call it legal, I don't know what you're going to call it, legal proceedings with the county. We withdrew from going and approaching them. I even moved to the point that, could you just explain to me why you're sending me this money and if I can count on it next year? Like, I wasn't even asking for more. It would not even write me a letter explaining why we're sending it. We will not commit even to that 10,000. They won't even say this money is for you. I literally get a check with no explanation whatsoever. And all I wanted was a letter of explanation what they accepted that check from. Totally uncooperative.
Thank you. I mean, we know it's up the creek without a paddle. Councillor Burton.
But just further to the stats about who's coming in, I would appreciate that information. You know, just how we want to break it down to make sense. Pretend, like Dr. Brown said, pretend you're running a business and those are your customers. When are they coming and when are they not coming and that kind of thing. And then my last question is, are there benchmarks that either Shinnecock or the province provides for the financial end of libraries to see how we're doing compared to other libraries?
It's strictly for tax. Right? Because it's the most recent,
That would be income.
What you're asking
Benchmark.
is another library comparable in size. What is their reference in their town? That,
Yeah, that would be part of it. So it could be that, it could be
and what does it cost them to run their
cost
library?
per patron, it could, like however they break it down, there's maybe kind of benchmark out there that we could see, man, we're way ahead of the pack financially, we should be glad with 4.5%.
Right.
Or you could say, you know,
Right.
most everybody else is at 20%, we could do a little better. That kind of, it's kind of just an in the air number. You know, when we have one library that does what it does.
Right, we have a little incremental increase each year, but really, if there's something bigger, we can do.
would you like, like having that information, would you like it to be compared to communities that have the same population or communities that actually have the same,
Yeah, what do they provide? There's some.
right now the government doesn't offer one, but I could develop that myself and contact other library managers to find out what they get from their councils.
Shinnecock doesn't have that.
They
doesn't.
they have that staff. I don't know if they've shared it with you when you come to your yearly presentation here.
Yeah, we've had a couple years ago, we had a presentation.
But it seems to be financial.
Yes.
And then I think it's a bunch of work, but if it's out there, if it's out there, I would like to see it.
Jeff, you want to say
I want to
something?
mention, I know the province libraries division municipal affairs has some of that because I used a lot of it in our campaign
That's right.
with the province. So they have some stats, and I have to do a little digging, but I found them before. Because you must report to municipal affairs precisely as much as right.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, yes.
So they knew this is the exact percentage, the average for the municipality supports the total percentage of library budget. And this is, like, I've seen all that because I've used it in my presentation. So there was a stat, like, on the average, municipalities contribute 70% of the operating revenue to libraries. I think that was roughly the number. For example. Yeah, that's out there somewhere.
From a municipal, you have that information.
Yeah. It was municipal affairs.
I'm sure it would be more operative,
But I can work
like
with
real
that.
numbers and not facts.
Yeah.
I think there's one more question, and then we promise we're going to let you.
No, I appreciate being here and discussing with this because I'm not a voting member of the board, but I do attend the library board meetings and this is what they talk about, and to get your feedback is just as important.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so, another question that I have is when, and looking at budgets and whatnot in not just the library, but others. And, I noticed that our insurance for the library is 10,000, and that's a portion to the town. Okay. So, my question is, why is the library, which is a town-owned building, charged for insurance when aggregate, swimming pool, other owned buildings by the town are not charged for the insurance? Why are we charged that $10,000?
So each facility is a bit unique, if I'm there. I mentioned, Councillor Jensen and I talked about this before. I
back and forth.
Oh, yeah, okay. So the genesis of that.
From the town's point of view, they tell us, we do it.
Yeah.
Okay. The last one several years ago was we want the library to use the insurance, we'll allocate the funds for it. But prior to that, the town had.
I think the question is, who's paying for it, and why does it exist separately?
Yes, so,
Why is it on our budget item?
No, why are they being, why isn't that part of their general insurance policy for us?
so, yes, so we bill the library for the insurance related to the library. Up until a couple of years ago, we were doing with the seniors, we were doing with the museum. Since we've put both of them on their own policy, because they're pretty much, well, the museum isn't even ours anymore, the Historical Society owns it. And because the seniors manage and take care of that building, they have their own policy. So we have different arrangements throughout different facilities, certainly. From a financial point of view, whether we simply pay it and allocate it as a library cost, or bill it to the library and then get it back in requisition, it's relatively fixed.
It's a bill, right?
Well, I have the offer for Donna. I get it. So I get that. Because those costs have just been escalating like crazy, and we're expecting another, just so you know, we're expecting another 15% going into 2024. Just under 300 grand right now over the whole town. So to give you some idea of those costs. So there was obviously a discussion in the genesis of the library. That's how they wanted to handle it. And
Let me
you could argue both ways.
going back to the Genesis. It was built in order to get this grand kind of donations and everything. It was the library board that was building it. I remember having to call Revenue Canada. I was claiming a GST rebate on the building. And if you were deemed to be part of the municipality, you got 100% of that. If you were just a library, you got 50% of that. So I got a letter from Revenue Canada saying, yes, you're deemed to be part of the municipality. Really, it was the board building it, because we got government grants to the board. But really, when it comes down to it, we all walk away from the library. It is the town's building.
So in talking to Jen, about it, I said, so what does the library board do? You know, and so Jen suggested that, if you're interested in pursuing, going down that road, pursuing that, it needs from a request from the library board to council, so anyway, so it just
Well, I mean,
falls
we
back
certainly
on the
make a
library.
request to the town council to remove us from the paying our own separate.
We still see it in the budget.
See the point. It's still there.
I mean, I think you want it allocated in budget so that you can see that this is the library. These are all the costs tied to the library.
Okay. Councillor Grainger.
No, I was just gonna say, and the Agrodome, they have their insurance as well, Councillor. So we do have separate, every entity is a little bit different. But for me, I guess I just don't understand what would be the point of removing it. I like it as a line item because I like to see it under the library. So the library, right? Like in my head, I like that list. So whether we give them $10,000 or we keep it and pay the insurance,
I think that's why it was originally moved over to our budget so that it was easier for council to see.
Full cost of library, yeah. Councillor Grainger.
Yeah, just quickly, I wanted to follow up on something that Councillor Clark was talking about with the county. We've always been focusing on the concern that the county is maybe not paying its fair share because of the significant number of users from the county, other than just our municipality users. But I wanted to ask, is there a sense, the other major group out there that might be using the library is members of the Blood Tribe, and you guys have a sense as to is it a measurable or a significant number of people from the Blood Reserve using the library? And if the answer is yes to that, Okay, so the answer to my question is there's likely a measurable number of blood tribe reserve members using the library, but you guys have never gone and pointed this out to them and asked them for funding, correct?
No, we haven't.
Well, you might
Because
consider
they
that.
have their own library.
Yeah, but I don't know that that's relevant to what we're talking about here. The fact is that we've got users in the county and users from the blood tribe who are, in our view, I think collectively, are not contributing their fair share to the operation of this library.
And we've had discussions in the past of do we charge more for their user fee than town member?
Back in the
Well,
day,
that's an option too, but yeah, that's a bit of a rabbit hole to go. Yeah, it's a bit of a rabbit hole to go down. I
Back in
agree.
1990, council members did pay more for membership because we raised our family out at Carmen, and we paid more for our membership. But I remember that was all the title sponsors at that time.
It was not very
It was
pleasant.
not.
Councillor Brown, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, so I would not support, the raising of the fees and putting me against you. I would prefer go straight to the source, which is the county. It seems to be our source spot there, and I feel like we're trying to handle it. I also would be totally uncomfortable with, you said, how many blood tribe members? Okay, so 219 people. Well, we have way more than that coming from the county and elsewhere. I'm betting as far as numbers go. And you're right, they have their own library. It actually is moving right now. It's in the rec center, but they're moving it to another center. So, yeah, I would not be in favor of that. Thank you.
Anyone can always write a letter to the Blood Type Council to say, lost several of your community members using the library, would you like to help with funding? But, yeah, I don't go down that rabbit hole.
I want to. I think if we're going to go for anybody, we go to the county, and I would not have a problem with you guys writing a letter as you have before. Because
And we were ready to go do another presentation, but we were told to hold.
are we over that?
Yeah.
Are we over the whole time for New Year to do that? I think we're over that.
Our
The
board is
library
willing to do that years ago.
go team.
Councillor
And
Cole.
I used to call it, I got my stats wrong. We have 3 blood tribe members and 219 county members.
Thank you. Yeah, that changed our
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's 3.
And I just wanted to know what the numbers were.
No,
because I
yeah,
didn't know that.
no, I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right, so thank you very much for your presentation, and sorry if you felt like we were really trying to understand a little bit
That's what
more.
we wanted to talk about, but
But-
other than that, we were happy to be here.
Yeah.
I was happy to talk about the library.
Moving on. November comes around, budget.
I like to brag about the library.
It's budget programming and also appropriation and salaries and whatever else.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, and keep up the good work, thank you. All right. That was, thank you, councillors, for all your questions.
I just want to say, I do have sleep at 7:30.
Yeah, sorry, I appreciate it. Hopefully it will be done.
It's hard to ask those types of questions without them feeling.
Well, that's a little bit under attack, but I shouldn't feel that way. It's the same question we ask any other department for the same reason. Dealing with the budget at this time, and we need to understand, right? So, the adoption of minutes, we have minutes of October 24th, Councillor Jensen.
I'd like to make another, motion to adopt the minutes from the October 24th, 2023 council meeting.
Thank you. All right. We have also the minutes of the organizational meeting of October 24th that we approved.
I make a motion to approve the organizational meeting minutes from October 24th.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. All right, bylaws and policies policy Act 2012, there is a little glitch that we need to fix by way of amendment. Jeff, maybe you want to.
Fairly straightforward. We have did this a while ago, missed changing the minor hockey and skating club fee. And the board had already approved that rate, but it was just not put in the policy. So this F-20-12 contains the updated rate, which is $80, which is a $5 an hour change. That matches the rate, and we're just asking for a motion to clean that up.
Okay. Councillor Kenley had to stand up first, Councillor Grainger.
I don't have questions.
I have a comment.
Okay. All right. Can we put a motion and then
Sorry,
go and talk?
I'll make a motion to adopt policy F-20-12.
Okay. Questions?
So, a comment. Next year, it would be helpful, I think, if we had the percentage, just like I discussed with them, what percentage does this represent of their expense? You know, of our portion of the budget for them. So each of the recreational facilities, I think we need to I don't think that over the rest, but so okay, each one is one of the things that I would like to see with the city's rates is it 4.5%, is it 62%, is it 120%?
How much are we recouping?
Yeah, how are we doing on each one?
Yeah.
To me, that'd be relevant.
Yeah.
I don't do this year, but for next year, I think it would be
Yeah. Councillor Grainger, Councillor Paula?
Yeah, I was just gonna make the motion, so I'm okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Paula.
Councillor Brown talked a bit before Councillor about this, and I should have picked up on it faster, but 40 service campground for $40 a month is cheap. Okay. Now, Councillor Brown made a good comment that why are we being our taxpayers and people from out of town charging a little bit more than they can pay instead of our taxpayers. I'd love to see at least $45. Again, I can't round it. That's still cheap, yeah, it really is. But we don't want to run it too fast, but that's the increase.
So, I'm trying to figure out, do you want to see that increase by way of amendment now, before next season? Is that what you want to do? So I'm not so sure, Jeff, how you would like us to handle that.
Do you want us to get an opinion from the operator or any feedback?
Maybe it would be worthwhile trying to do that. To do it as by way of another amendment.
I can bring an amendment back to the next meeting. That's fine.
Okay, so maybe do we rescind approving it, this thing? No? Okay.
I would still like to push for that amendment. I believe that the operator doesn't have the say in it, doesn't even care. We're still going to pull that campground up at $40 or $45.
But would it be appropriate to at least let them know?
For a campground.
Yeah, I agree. That it's operated by a contractor. Councillor Grainger?
Yeah, just a comment. Yeah, Councillor Court's absolutely right. 45 is peak. For example, I know that the KOA campground just south of the border at Glacier National Park is now up to $120 US a night.
It's pretty common.
Yeah.
That's common everywhere.
Yeah, but you know, it's not that far away from us, and it's, you know, a pretty good deal to come to Cardston.
I agree with you. I use that campground and always found the rates being very, very reasonable, too reasonable maybe. So when we represented those fees a while back, we never caught on those things. So let's vote on this amendment and then we can always get another one. Okay, so this amendment is to fix the minor hockey, and that's what we are doing right now. So we have a motion. So all question?
Can we not add it to this motion?
You can if you want. Like I said, I don't see expediency to it. So if you don't want the opinion of the operator, then make your motion that's fine.
because we won't be charging for next year anyhow.
So it's, like I said, I don't see it as a panic. I think that we're fine with it, by the way. I share Councillor Court's opinion on that, but yeah, you certainly can.
So did the operator give us these numbers, or these just our own
Yeah.
numbers?
It's been a number of years, but yes. Yeah, we did that in the
How much
corporation.
for this year? Did you discuss it with the operator already to say?
So those have been set for probably 3 years, the last time.
Because
Yeah.
the one reason that we might talk to the operators, you might say, kidding me, it should be 7, or whatever.
Well, maybe so.
All right, let's hold and talk to them then.
Okay,
No, I mean,
all right,
like,
yeah, no, I agree
45
with
might
you.
be ridiculously low,
Yeah.
I know, but.
Yeah, makes sense, Councillor. Okay, so let's vote on strictly that minor hardship. All in favor? Okay, so then Jeff, maybe you want to contact the operator and try to have a discussion regarding this fee. I think you can do it. Do you want to?
I'll talk to you.
Okay, the next one, maybe you want to talk about that too, Jeff, or you feel 2024 electrical
Yeah.
distribution. I don't like what we heard this for.
Champion on these share screens, so Councillor Grainger, well, so everyone can see it. I didn't do a bylaw amendment yet. As the board of directors for your, then you have to look at your rates every year. And last year we held rates, we didn't use them. Kevin Phillips and I have been working on what does it look like moving forward. We've had to wait about a month later than usual we wait for Fortis to file their rate proposals to the Utilities Commission so that we can see what they're proposing, because it directly affects us. Because we are a customer, we bring in all that power and we're billed by Fortis. So they've made their submissions and we've been trying to work through the numbers. I wanted to pull up a slide here. This gets complicated, and I don't argue for a minute that the electrical distribution system and associated rates get complicated. So I just wanted to go over a quick slide on what are we looking at and what are we considering, and I'll just let me just share my screen here real quick. Hopefully this works fine. Right there. So, Councillor Grainger, you see a blank sheet that says distribution rates?
I do.
Okay, good. So there's a number of things we look at when we try and figure out what to do with distribution rates. And I just wanted to put the key ones down and give you an idea of what's happening in that environment right now. So the first thing we is what is the return we want on our system? How much should this be benefiting the ratepayers? So we own this for a reason. We own it because it should generate revenues or profits, I should say, to benefit the taxpayers. So in 2023, we budgeted a profit of $466,000 on the system, which is to transfer to tax, offset taxation needs, which is good. As we get to near the end of the year, we have an unplanned $160,800, which is a quarterly transmission charge to PTAR. So what happens is when the market is volatile, we get charged riders on the transmission charges, and those are brought in quarterly. And so because of the volatility in the market this year, the volatility of energy price, the challenges the system had in keeping capacity in the lines, we inherited $161,000 roughly additional transmission charges than we budgeted for. Now they're back down to where they should be, and they're supposed to hold through the rest of the year, but this is some of that volatility we experienced. So the other thing I want to point out to council is 2 council terms ago, I believe, set up a reserve account, particularly to deal with this volatility. So unfortunately, it only has $230,000 of it, and we need $161,000 for this year, but it's there for a reason, and so that's great. And now what we're looking at, and I'll come back to this point, is we're looking at projected increase 3. So that's the rate the town pays for us for the distribution charges of everyone within our franchise, and then you as a council turn around and create rates to recoup that plus a margin. And that's what gets us our profitability. So in Fortis' application a couple weeks ago, they applied for a 12.8% increase on transmission and 8.5% increase on distribution. And that's where we get that $132,000 above. So that's a considerable number for us to have to try and recoup. And we don't just want to absorb that. We don't just want to eat it. And so that's the other thing we look at. And then third is we look at what is the forecasted impact on forest residential and commercial customers. And the reason we look at that is that 12 or 13 years ago, whatever it was, the council of the day said, we want to be in relative parity with forest. We want to be somewhere in the same ballpark so that we're not leaving a whole bunch of money on the table, but we're providing a competitive rate to our residents. And so what we're looking at right now for 2024 is 3 categories, that Cardston has. We have residential, small commercial, medium commercial. Those are the percentages we're looking to be relative to a typical Fortis user and a typical Cardston user. I can't stress that enough. We're just taking a typical user. It does not capture every user. We simply take, if you were in the county just across the road and you used X amount of kilowatts and this was the price, this would be your typical use, in town the same way. And so when we're trying to figure out what to propose to you as a board of directors for this thing, we look at those 3 items predominantly. And there's some other little things too. We try and forecast if there's going to be any other quarterly transmission adjustments. That's really tough to do. Council has the opportunity to amend our distribution rates quarterly. We found that to be onerous because we have all kinds of requirements to inform all the retailers that work with us of what that is and make sure they're compliant. And we have probably 30 different retailers that can operate in the town of Cardston. And so there's some work there. It's not too bad, but there's some work there. So I just wanted to, we didn't really have to mess around with this last year. So I wanted to just get you up to speed on some of the data. We're looking at the highest increase in year-over-year that I've ever seen from the distributor on our D&T charges. And we're trying to decide how to keep pace. And so this table that you see is really just looking at some real dollar impact of the typical user. So if I start on the left-hand side, so residential, for example, the current typical Cardston user is about $132.76 a month, which is, and this is currently in 2023, which is about 94.2% of what the Fortis user would be across the street. Now, in January 2021, we're looking at a potential, if we flow through those increases from Fortis, we're looking at a 10% increase on distribution and transmission charges for a typical user. And if you factor in their retail use, all their consumption, about a 5.2% increase on the whole bill. So that translates to a typical user going up to $139.66. But if we implement a 10.3 on the D&T, it generates us $104,000 in additional revenue.
I'm wondering about this for a couple of months. We had the explosively large increase in the summertime. What was the reason behind that?
So you had this huge, it depends if you were an RRO customer or not. So RRO customers saw historically high rates, never been seen in the province before ever. We had more instability on the system than ever before. So our system was more unstable than it's ever been. And so what happens is your operators, the ISO, that's where we start getting these quarterly transmission rider charges too. And they start charging for that instability. They start charging for mitigating the instability because they're buying electricity at crazy prices to try and stabilize the system.
You probably can't answer this, but how much of that is due to the reliance on solar and wind?
So I didn't answer that, and I have an opinion on it, but it might not be correct. Right. The problem with renewables, while I appreciate the underlying intent of them, is they're not on demand. And last time I checked, it's been dark for an hour. And everyone just went home and turned on the microwave, and the washing machine, and the heat. And there's no renewable generating electricity in this province right now, and it creates a ton of instability on the system. So yeah, I guess wind could be blowing, and that's fine. But all the solar has been off for an hour and a half.
That's a problem across North America all of a sudden.
The windmill, if you can store the power.
So you can see on the small commercial proposing this gets more complicated, Council, and if you want me to dive into it, I can, but we also, when we structure rate changes, we can structure on the fixed portion of the bill, we can structure on the variable portion of the bill. We try and mimic Fortis a bit, and we've seen Fortis, Mayor and I've had long conversations about this. Fortis has almost moved 100% of their fees to the fixed portion, which essentially eliminates any incentives for being efficient for efficiencies, because all of your D&T charges are on the fixed portion now. You don't save anything on your D&T by operating efficiently. I have a simple, but that's another story. And then on medium commercial, you can see 3.8%, 1.1%. The reason why those are lower is, for one, it's a way smaller pool of customers than on residential. Obviously, I think we have just a few. And we were already really to the Fortis rate than we were on residential and small commercial. And so we were trying to not push that beyond Fortis's rate. We wanted to keep that competitive and close to parity. And again, this is a typical customer, so some customers are a little more, some are a little less. So, again, we've not drafted a bylaw, but I do need to bring one back next week. And so I just wanted to have, I didn't want some sticker shock coming back to you next week, because it is our recommendation that we implement increases to residential, small commercial, and medium commercial distribution and transmission charges at those percentages. January.
So, Jeff, help me understand the increases from Fortis were 12 and 8.
Yep. 12.8% on transmission and 8.5% on distribution.
Well, they go back to your proposals.
So why is it 10.3, 5.2, that kind of thing?
Yeah, why haven't we just flowed those through?
So they have, but they're weighted differently on each category of customer. So we get an increase on rate 63. That's those aforementioned percentages, but that doesn't weigh the same on those types of customers. So we don't just flow through 12.5% on residential. The weighting of that transmission and distribution charge is different in that rate class. And I know that's really kind of strange to get your head around, but we will pay a different percentage of weighting between transmission and distribution than residential will pay between transmission and distribution.
But even with that the case.
And also, Councillor, we didn't evenly distribute it between our three rate classes either.
Right, I see that.
Yeah.
But even so, even given the weight differential, my sense is we're not, that we're eating some of that.
No, we are, so 114.
You have it as 10.5%.
10.3. So we are, if you add my three columns on the right, 103, 11, so we're 114, 115, plus, so it's 128.5-ish. And we're projecting a 133 increase from the distributor. So this is $5,000 in there. Yeah. We try to get it really close and trying to keep it on the low end, right? That's the trick. And it's a good observation, Councillor, because you're right. I'm trying to recoup this 133.50, which is an estimate. We also recognize that. We're trying to forecast consumption and demand in the whole country too, which is a massively complicated thing to do. So we also anticipate some additional consumption. So we might see a 12% increase, but we might have some additional demand and consumption. So yes, it's a bit of art and some science, because there's a lot of crystal balling. It's a very good observation.
Thank you very much. So that is what we are going to have to wait for, is your bylaw that you're going to go out for.
Yes, so we'll bring in amendments, but tonight really, I mean, if you are the board of directors for this distribution system, you have the discretion to put this wherever you want. So maybe you say to yourself, look, we're okay to only make $350,000 a year on the system, and we want to only do half of this. You absolutely have that discretion. And that's why I wanted all those numbers on the page, is you can determine, maybe you don't want to be a parity for us. Maybe you're saying, no, we're going to hold. And we're going to let them move, and we're going to stay down. And then I have to bring bring you a scenario as to what that costs.
But essentially, with that idea, if we don't flow through or come close to a flow through, sooner or later, when you have capital expenses, where do you find the money? You're starting to increase your utility, no matter which way. So isn't it better if you kind of bite the bullet here, rather than later on? That has me more concerned than.
Something to consider for sure.
So, two questions if I could. One, in that small commercial, medium commercial,
Yeah.
with this 2 years ago, but
Institutional properties.
yeah.
Yeah, right,
So
exactly.
some are, well, they're all contained in one of those two.
So,
They're all in one of those.
I would rather load up those guys than with our residents.
So it's not by accident that medium commercial's at 98.8%.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
If we're gonna take up that 1,000 or whatever, my opinion is we'll load those guys on our residents. That's my first one.
But also remember, a lot of your businesses are in the same
I
category.
realize that. Choose. Get it from somebody, I'd rather have the province paying more than our residents. My other question, Jeff, is our profit of 466, if we put that over the value of our asset, what ROI is that?
Good question. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can find that out because I'm now interested in what the answer to that is.
Because if we had any other asset, we might say, well, we want an 8% return would be reasonable,
Right.
or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yep. I'm just gonna
We have
stop sharing and make my note here.
Yeah. All right.
So, are you tolerant of a first reading next week that basically will be somewhere close, very close to those numbers I just presented in each rate category? That's my ultimate question for you.
Personally, needed, but I can see that it's necessary. Do you mind me taking that comment?
So yes, I think if you were to go around the table, I would say yes. Direct administration.
No, it's okay. You're getting a draft, whether you want it or not. I just need to know.
Agreements, 240,000, 291 for the library. Part of the reason you would probably a little bit better off is because your library doesn't stand alone. So it's building
Councillor Jensen, you want to assume the chair even just from your seat there?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'll proceed, Council, Grainger, first reading, we can talk more about it next week.
Okay, so our next item then is the budget 2024, so we have to.
Yeah, remember these, Council? I will say that the amount of discussion we're going to have on it doesn't justify the amount of paper. Yeah, we decided if the library went more than 30 minutes, we were ordering food. So we should order food.
Should we take a 5-minute break, or we could use one for something?
Sure. Councillor Jensen.
Can I make a motion to take a 5-minute break?
Yep. you guys get to make the really hard decisions of the last $100,000 here and the last $100,000 there. And then we'll bring you a balanced budget in our meeting in December. So I think we're going to be fine. We're moving along. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. Again, I'll just go by the general ledger account codes on the left. And we'll go with that.
Bon appetit, Councillor.
So, we base this on a 2% increase in taxation. You'll see the difference between 2023 and 2024 is your first line. Fairly minor again. We hope most of that is taken up by a new assessment. That's always the hope. And so we'll know that a little bit better. I wanted to talk for just a minute about, if you go to page, where it says page 15 on yours, because we have a bunch of stuff before this, so page 15, and it's still in the revenue side. It's just near the end, 172,702 revenue. This is going to be another one, Councillor. We're taking a bit of a shot in the dark on revenue here, because I don't know how what we're going to do for the clubhouse is going to impact revenue. So we probably had pushing $100,000 in revenue under categories like the pro shop, food, merchandise, those kinds of things. We're not offering any of that next year. If we're working out of an ATCO trailer, if we're working out of something that doesn't allow for that. And so that number is going to be a bit interesting. When I say we, I mean the royal we, all of us in the room. We need to have some deep conversations about the golf course over the winter. We need to decide about things like the level of service and what we're offering there. We had a great year revenue-wise at the golf course, and we lost a bunch of money. And it isn't obvious that driving revenue makes a dollar there. In fact, you could argue that every round we play is coming at a loss. It's expensive to run a course, and our expenses have gone up a lot, and I'm going to be working a lot this winter to figure out where that can come down. So we did $821,000 of revenue at the course, not including GST. So it was like we budgeted 707. So that sounds great. Like there's 120,000 there, but our expenses follow with that additional revenue. There's just costs associated with every round of golf, particularly in staffing. And so we think once the dust settles on the entire year, once we transfer all the benefits from payroll, we get all the bank service charges, we do everything. We had budgeted a $32,000 loss on the 707 in revenue. We think we're going to experience a $64,000 loss on $821,000 worth of revenue. And so that forces us to ask hard questions about what's the service level offering at the golf course, and what's the fee structure of the golf course, and those kind of things. One thing I'm encouraged about is Sandy and the team kept really good data this year about number of rounds, which were member rounds, what were green fee rounds, et cetera, et cetera. So we could look at different data and say, okay, this member, not to pick on Councillor Kennedy, it wasn't him actually, we have members that play over 100 rounds on a $1,200 membership. And so you start to ask yourself, if your break-even cost is $40 a round, we got guys playing $10 rounds. And is that reasonable? And it might be, by the way. It might be, but we have to have some of that discussion. And it'll form our rates, and it's going to form everything that when we look at those kind of numbers.
So I hear what you're saying. However, on top of that 60-ish thousand that we lost, we also bought a expensive lawnmower that we had to have, and we don't typically buy one of those.
No, but capital is not included in that number.
No. You needed it to be.
Once I include capital, the loss is $254,639.
Wow.
I've never said a loss of $254,000. I've never been in a situation. So, yeah, capital, that's not included in what we're talking about. That's just operations. And we have some adjustments to make from a labor point of view, for sure.
Sandy, think we were overstaffed or over anything?
No, and because it was off elevated level of service this year we had out there either, but it didn't need to run where it did to address that. Right? Our maintenance stayed really close. In fact, maintenance stayed just a touch under what we budgeted, but other categories just ran over trying to, and the golfer liked that level of service, by the way. I can't speak for everyone, but that was feedback we all got. We had some one-time expenses to incur, but that might be $20,000 worth of stuff. You know, it was kind of the one-times. So.
Councillor Burton and then Councillor Grainger.
The issue you raised of the $10 golf round, I mean, is it really right? It really depends on a lot of stuff. So, for example, if you reach capacity, if it's $10 round and somebody else doesn't pay $100, that's a really expensive $10.
Yeah, sure.
If nobody's out there at 5 in the morning anyway, sorry, that's a comment. And the question is, have you broken it down to kind of like fixed and variable costs on that, so that we would say it's going to cost us this much just to be open, and when is the solution might help look what the solution is. So we might say, well, if we go to these fixed costs, that's 9. If we just pile more rounds, if we spend more money on marketing, we get more people in, we have a better clubhouse, that brings more people. We do offer better food, that brings more people. Then the solution might point us to do something like that, as opposed to if it has a really high variable cost, it doesn't matter. The more rounds we have, the more it costs us. Who cares? So that fixed versus variable analysis might be helpful.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And now that we've kind of got the dust settling on our numbers, we can start doing that for sure. And like I said, we did about 21,000 rounds this year, I think, which is actually like the national average rounds of the course, which is great.
Like a 4-season course?
No, just across like Canada. Yeah, so across Canada, I think that Sandy was telling me that's kind of the average. All the golf courses that belong to the Canadian Golf Association submit their rounds every year, and they send it right back out. And he said that we were right in the mix, and there is so it also depends. This is a municipally owned course, and if I look at a $63,000 operational loss over $821,000 in revenue, that's a pretty good cost recovery compared to our other recreation facilities. In fact, it's an excellent cost recovery percentage relative to our other facilities. So that doesn't offend me at all.
It sounds like a basket hunt to me.
Yeah, it is. I got my mic on because I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Jeff, this looks suspiciously, although what I'm going to say might be too simplified, but what it suspiciously looks like is that maybe our fees are too low. I know one of the attractive things about this golf course is how competitive it is, how affordable it is compared to a lot of other ones, but I'm wondering if this is pointing towards that our fees are too low.
And it's a great point, Councillor, and it's something we're looking at, because if you know, let's say we decide that $20,000 a year for 1 week. By the way, I wasn't planning on going this far down the golf rabbit hole right now, and we will do more of this. But if you know that you can staff and maintain a course that can handle the beating of 20 rounds, then you can start to move your fees to where you raise the fee as high as you can to still maintain 20,000 rounds. Right? There's a point. There's an inflection point.
Yeah.
And so that's the discussion you have to have. What complicates it for golf courses, and particularly municipally owned ones, is what happens with your membership fees. And are you going to make those maybe artificially low and recoup it in the green fee? There's lots of things to discuss, which will the golf course has had lots of discussion. We'll have more discussion.
Members advise.
Yeah, they're all members, that's true. There's an inherent confusion. Mayor, Councillor Grainger.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to suggest, Jeff, that you give the municipal district of Squamish and British Columbia a call, because their golf course is municipally owned, very similar size. I think there's a parallel there between what we're doing and what they're doing. I'd be I know it, and I worked in their municipal government administration. I'd be curious, because I think it's a good parallel comparable, to see, you know, what they charge and what some of their numbers are, and I'm sure that they will talk to you.
Sure.
Because it's a real parallel to what we're doing in terms of size and scope. Okay?
Good, thank you. I just wanted to mention too, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, when, you know, the previous, when you guys handed it over to a couple of the fans or whatever, they did that. They raised their fees. They weren't successful because, you know, so we even every year with the golf committee is that what is our number where we can bring them to the southernmost of the province and then not stop in McGrath or Lethbridge. So we're trying to find that number that's like they don't want to spend the extra $20 per person. And so that's we are low, yes, we understand that, but we also want 20,000 rounds a year to keep them.
Can I ask you a question, Councillor Kenny? Do we have any stats or data regarding from where the people are coming when they come for rounds? Because that would be quite important for us to know. Where is that money from the central library? If we don't keep stats to really understand where the market is, how can we improve things?
So we'll work on a lot of that, but I just want to let you know that golf course, no, it's all good, that golf course revenue number is going to move a little bit. I also wanted to mention, I'm very encouraged about it. Years ago, we did the recreation master plan where we were able to set out the asset management over 60 years for recreation, but at that time, the golf course was not included. It wasn't part of that overall plan. Hawken and Sandy and Josh are starting on that this week, and we're going to have another, exactly like the rec master plan, for all the assets of the golf course. So that we have so that hopefully our capital spending is not, let's call it ad hoc.
Yeah.
That there is much more deliberate number of time the capital planning in the golf course. So I'm really encouraged about that. That's also going to drive the discussion on rates and fees. It has to. So if I come back to you, council, and say we need to be reserving $150,000 a year at the golf course in order to keep pace with our assets, well then I need to have $150,000 surplus on top of it to fund that. And that's going to have a dramatic impact on how we talk about fees. It just will. So all this stuff is starting to come together. Better data, capital plans. The rounds are where we'd like to see them. The rounds are superior to pre-COVID, and they seem to be holding. We've had 2 years now where they've held, so it doesn't seem to be an anomaly. So that's great. So keep an eye. You'll see all our numbers on the expense side. Those are going to change a lot between now and the December budget, but we'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
Thank you.
So then we get into expenses, and by and large, operationally, council, this is saying there's no major things here. There's some bigger numbers on page 16, 212503. We have to do a server upgrade. That stuff just gets frustratingly expensive. Some of our tax and our payable receivable software is going to expire next year. We're server stuff, and we're having there, so that's $6,000 as far as we know right now. That's really about the only anomaly there. Some good news, because I like to mix that in occasionally when we talk about budget. On page 17, 212830, that next year is the last year of the annexation payments on the golf course and the associated lands agreement. And so that's a good thing. We got one more year, and then that annexation payment's done. So that comes off in 25 and 26. That expense isn't there anymore. I wanted to just mention, we don't even need to decide it anytime really soon. We saw the next line under is election expense. And I'm not planning on having an election. But it triggered my thoughts that some of you might remember 4 years ago, I think, we did a census. So we did our own municipal census because at the time municipal affairs would accept an appropriately done census, and our numbers went up a lot from what the province had us at. About 35. We did the census, we were at 3,909. 2 years ago, the province said we're no longer going to use municipal census, everything's formula based, and that put us down to like And we've seen where we've even seen a presentation, I think, one time where someone says, look at our population has declined over the last 5 years. Well, that's because we've changed methodologies of how we calculated the population. The province has realized that the model they started a couple of years ago maybe isn't as accurate as it could be. And they now accept municipal census again. And so we've been talking in the office a little bit about, they're a lot of work, they're expensive, but it will likely jump our population numbers for the purposes of municipal affairs and grants, and that's what it probably drive us up another 200 or more. We'd be pushing 4,000 again.
Cost you more on your solid waste bill.
So it costs you more on rural policing initiatives, it costs you more on solid waste, it costs you more on a number of things. It's a double-edged sword, for certain.
But the revenue on the grants can be so much superior.
What I have to understand too is the local government fiscal framework does contain a population piece, but I've got to understand the weighting of that a little better. So we'll have more conversation about that maybe in the spring. We partnered with Airdrie last time because they actually have a software and a whole program for doing municipal census. They do it every year because they were growing so fast that they wanted to capture that every year between statisticians. I just bring that up under the election piece. That if you want to talk, kind of keep about municipal census, I think we would be looking at Allan if we did one. Next page 18. Page 18, 3/4 of the way down the page, 232,501 of their street materials. Leonard talked to you about looking at getting a crushing machine. The more we talk about this is something we might really look at because it's something we can rent to our other municipal partners and it's not seasonally based. Use it any time of year. Leonard wants to use it in the winter because we have a couple extra public works guys that might have capacity in the winter, but others may want it in the summer. We think this might be a very interesting proposition. Instead of spending $100 every few years, if we can buy a $250,000 crusher, just our own rate of return is significant. And so we've taken any money out for that. We're going to look at that a little bit more and bring something to you before December. The Mark's trying to find some competitive quotes on that and some other manufacturers. But we've been talking more that there may be something to this in partnership. We put the word for neighbors and friends and see if that's something they would participate as well in renting from us on an annual basis.
So just going back to my Sterling Raymond experience, and I agree renting is a good way to do it, but we actually bought shares.
Share capital, yep.
And we said about, in a year, earlier you said 20%, no, you said 80%, just put it in. And it worked out, it really did.
And that's a great model. We can also look to see if we've got municipal partners for Country Creek. We might have a mountain and this stuff too. We all do this different, right? So for example, we tear all the streets out and then bring in the pavers, and we do the road prep and do all that. Other municipalities simply say contractor, make it go away, and then pay it. And so our needs are all different, so we just have to work with that.
Some of that, we could actually see paying them all the way. What we do makes way more sense. The question is, do Maylands have some of their material there? Did they buy that from us?
Yes and yes. So what happened, and I think this is actually an active part out of this, but I think so we had a mountain this and Sage mobilized and said, look, while we're here, instead of demoting, we said, we don't have enough to pay you to crush everything there. And so they said, well, we'll crush everything if you want. You pay us some this year, some next year, and then we'll keep some. And so there was a year's mine in ours.
I was wondering if there was even something else, not in municipal, even a commercial, maybe one or pressure.
Oh, right, yeah. If the McNallys or Tall Strips or Genexes of the world, sure, that might be a viable thing too. So yeah, some of that was they can crush our asphalt, crush the cement. That's what this machine was.
They could have been what they paid.
Yeah.
They took the layer off that. So we can have to do whatever.
Yeah, for sure. We found that the milling machines, and actually you saw 80 not using one because they're trying to exclude the contract, and so they got the money out of it. Those have been priced outrageous per unit. It's just bizarre. That's why we've just been tearing it out and then crushing it. Because every year we have all our contractors, we ask them to include milling the machine, and it drives the cost just crazy. And so we always end up backing it out. Yeah, so we just find it's way better for us. I wanted to talk about on page 21, and on the library. I do not want to deep dive on the library, because you had a chance to do that. What I wanted to talk about is, and I appreciate that Deb brought up, that part of that 20,000, 17,000 in lighting, I've asked Anthony, he's back part-time, I've asked him to look at that lighting, look for some grants and look what they can do. So he's actually been working with their group, he's looking at some grants, he has that number down to 10 right now, so that we can do all of that for 10, and he's continuing to look for some grant money to get that going. So we are working to try and alleviate that expense from the requisition. But I can tell you we're from 7 to 10 right now, and we'll keep working on it.
Can I jump back?
Go ahead.
So on page 19, just a question, the garbage section.
Yeah.
Which one of those numbers is the requisition?
The Solid Waste Authority?
Yeah.
That's our regional contract, 243,300.
The 118,000.
Well, 123,900 in 2024.
They said when we were just working on the budget last time and we deferred it to our next meeting, but they just wanted us to tell each municipality that it's going to be at least 10% increase.
And it looks like we've captured that. Yeah. I think we've captured that. But that's the one. Okay, so library, we're working on a few things. In our Parks and Recreation, so still on page 21, you'll see in 2024 there's a few just small little things in there. The Rec Master Plan did not call for a whole bunch of things in this year. It was kind of one of those savings years where we'll keep a little money in the pot for big stuff coming up. And so you see Randy's got some reunion center fixes, at the campground there's some new siding, bridge at the soccer field, fencing at the bag cage, just fairly minor stuff. That's why it's inoperational. We don't even consider it to be capitalized. It's just smaller operational expenses. On page 22, I just want to talk about the pool for a minute. So we have two accounts on pool, 272-201, 272-202. I've been concerned for a couple of years, but 2023 really did it to me, that our costs to operate that pool are really starting to go up. It's really starting to climb. There's two reasons. One is the pool is now getting through its 8th season, and so we're starting to see things like our chemical controllers fail, and just some of those components. It's in a humid, chlorinated environment in that room. So we're seeing accelerated rust and repairs, just things like that. It's been 8 seasons now. And so you'll see under the pool materials, 272-202, you've got things like chemical control upgrade, pump control upgrade, and air exchanger in the mechanical room. So Randy's trying to get ahead of saying, watching this stuff rust, we can probably put in an air exchanger and get the humidity down to 30% instead of 90 in there all year. Those kinds of things. And I think that's right, by the way. We're just seeing that if we continue, and I'm not even sure I'm okay with this, but we put it in for now. If we continue to staff like we did this year at the pool, then it's considerably more expensive than how we staffed in the past. It's a big jump to staff how we did this year. And so we've got to work through that a little bit.
For example, how did we staff differently?
So this year we had a bit of an overlap because we had Greg and Erica, and then we rehired the position midway through. So we had a lot this year.
But other than that?
Yeah, but having those adult supervisors adds up fast, for May, June, July, August.
But I guess my question is, it was my understanding Greg and Erica were there because our other employee couldn't quite start quite yet.
Yeah.
But once coming this next season, the words, are they still doing it?
Well, we liked a bit of having someone like Erica who's frank that, and helping with the staff, and we've got to look at that. And I'm comfortable with it from a financial point of view, but it sure was good from a
It was.
staff management
No,
point of view, right?
100%. There was difference.
And the level of service and the quality of service was higher this year. You know, it was good.
Well, the complaints were down.
We're almost nothing. Yeah. We're almost
Sorry,
nothing.
I just wondered.
Yeah, no,
what that was.
and I knew you would be curious on that one, Councillor, for sure.
I do have a question, if I can, Mayor. Spray park. So we have 143,000, and then next year 92.
No, you are actually pulling from parts material on the page.
5,000.
Yeah.
5,000.
And the reason that's so different, by the way, in parts material is all the shell. We partnered with the school and ordered $60,000 of the shell. So that's why that's different this year.
Thank you.
I wanted to just touch real quick, 272,402, same page. I've been in contact with an architect who actually sent me what I thought was a really cool proposal for a capital improvement plan for the Agronome. We talked about this last meeting. So they come in, they go through everything, they go through mechanical, electrical, structural, and then they put a 1 to 2 year, 2 to 5, 5 to 10, and cost estimates to everything. And that's part of the service they provide. So I don't have a fixed price from them yet. We were just working on their hourly, but I asked them to give me an upset limit. So like if we can find blueprints and give him the data so he can put an upset limit on the price. So this may tweak a little bit. We were taking a bit of an estimate. But for what it's worth, and I know it's an expense, man, I think that will give us some good guidance on that facility going forward. Like, I think it would be a really good program to put that facility through. So I'll tidy that up as we go along.
Jeff, while we're talking about that idea, which I think is very good for us, what about the library? Because I don't seem to have a sense of what the capital needs are going to be in the future.
So
is that something we need to kind of look at?
we can, yeah, we haven't to this point. This always goes back to with your ag society. It is a responsibility of the society. With your library, it is a responsibility of the board. But we hit a point, thankfully, that building's 40 years newer than that building, so it hasn't been expedient, but it should be incorporated in asset management plan somewhere.
And I think we need to look at that, because you know it is going to be,
Yep. Yep.
Councillor Grainger.
Sorry, Jim, back to the Agronome engineering exercise. What is the name of the firm? What kind of company are they? And is that 15,000? That was the maximum price you think it could be?
So I don't have that exactly yet because they're working it out. So the gentleman's name is Neil Posey. He contracts for a number of firms in the city of Lethbridge. He actually has some familiarity with the Ag Society. He did some work for us years ago on the South Edition. I'd have to do his credentials as counselor. I just don't have them off the top of my head.
So he's a one-man outfit that needs his self-consultants?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious, and I mean, the 15,000 seems reasonable to me for that kind of thing, in the ballpark anyway. I was thinking it was going to be 25.
To the next budget and we'll talk, but we just had one conversation to this point.
Okay, well, it's great if it was that low.
Yeah. Okay. I can smell the pizza, council, so let me be, I'm actually wrapping up here pretty quick. I don't have anything else in the tax budget to speak of. If you go to page 25, this is our utilities department, so water, wastewater. And operationally, as you heard from Lenark and Brandon and Curtis, there's certainly a lot of capital needs there. Of course there are. But from the operational point of view, pretty minor. 241501, which is halfway on the page, water distribution. Curtis, as he mentioned, about getting some guidance on the raw water. They call it a master plan here, but that's not the right term. It's just some raw water infrastructure analysis. Councillor Grainger, I know Curtis was interested in pursuing the aquifer concept, just to see how that would bear out. That might be part of this too.
Well, that would be great. I was thinking about this after we talked about it the other day. Over at Moses Lake, that new water treatment plant, is it, I heard that its water supply is groundwater. Is that correct?
Correct. The wells are just, as you turn right on Highway inside.
And do you know how deep they are?
I don't know that detail, Councillor, no.
Well, my suggestion when Curtis was talking was that we engage make a bunch of phone calls to hydrogeologists in Lethbridge and Bloodshire to find out a little bit more about the science of their well, so to speak. Because I'll tell you, all the problems that we're having with our surface supply in terms of odor and taste aside, the mechanics of it, you know, we may find that down the road that system is potentially failing, and we may seriously want to look at a groundwater supply.
So question, under 241504, so in the list of all the things Curtis was talking about, I do see a few of them. My question is the chlorine study, is that in regards to the changing from the gas to the pucks or whatever that is?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was in 2023. That's in this.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
So he's looking into seeing how we could make changes, how we could make it safer. Is that what this 15 grand is?
Correct.
I love that.
And that's well underway. In fact, it's probably not quite done. So.
Awesome. Happy to see that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay. So that's really all I had right now operationally. Oh no, that's not true. If you go to page 26, sorry, I have a couple more highlights. Very quickly, and this is again hopefully a good news story. On page 6, with the sewer plant, power, gas, maintenance, all that stuff, you will see a precipitous decrease in those expenses for 2025 moving forward, because the hope is that we have a new plant online, and that our $317,000 power bill at the sewer plant will go down to $133,000. Just to give you some idea of the cost of running that dang thing. So, yeah. And so we're playing optimistic about operational costs being about half what it will be with the plant we currently have.
Music to my ears.
Yeah. And then we did add it, although on the opposite side, all that savings we added as a debenture payment on 242830. So we've added a debenture payment that will be offset by the power savings. But you know, that's not a bad thing either. If we can pay our debenture with power savings, that doesn't offend me.
Councillor Grainger.
Speaking of ventures, so, and I know this is capital, but because of that
Sure.
comment, our clubhouse, we're going to venture part of that.
You may. Well, it's highly likely I would say yes, because we spent 55 that was reserved on it.
Yeah, so, you know, and again, I'm all for building it better once, because wish we built it better later. So, do you have anything in here for interest
No, actually. Hawk and I talked about it and said, just for now, we're just going to pretend like the reserve's going to cover it, and then it's going to construction tender in January, hopefully, and then for mill rate, we'll know that. We'll know exactly where that needs to be. Well, in fact, frankly, you'll have to deal with it before mill rate, because we can't commence the project if there's any borrowing until you do a borrowing plan. Yeah. And so we thought we'll just leave that, because it doesn't affect your taxation bottom line, because if it comes in, we have to borrow, then the source of that funding is the borrowing. But the debenture payment will in the years going forward. We'll have to look at that too. But no, we haven't put that in yet, Councillor Grainger. We talked about that just a minute.
But talking about the same thing on the same time, right? You had mentioned before another meeting that many clubhouses are having difficulty breaking even with the facility when they're offered. So it's offered more as a service to enhance the service rather than a revenue making. So the size of it did not enhance the revenue, but increase the debt.
There's certainly a tipping point. And I think, and again, a beautiful facility, the Kronen passed to illustrate that. It's too big. Just the staffing requirement for that facility is costing them a lot of money. So they haven't made money on the food and beverage at that facility, ever.
But most courses lease those out. Like rough leases, or not really leases.
So maybe. Crow's Nest did that for a while, but they they had conflict with the operator that the quality of what they were doing, because the margins were so thin, was offensive to the patrons coming to the golf course. And so the challenge is trying to find that balance. Contractor to spend more on something they weren't making money on. Just out of interest, the recent poll in Canada, 51% of restaurants in Canada are losing money. So, all of our restaurants across this country are not making anything. And so we have to be very cautious now about how we approach this.
Yes, I think that is something we cannot ignore. If we want data, if we want facts, let us be fair about the process. No, what it is, and that we're looking at. Councillor?
Yeah, I've got a comment and then a question. The comment, Jeff, is in Squamish, one of the best restaurants in the entire community is at that golf course. And I'd be surprised if we're losing money because it's so popular, but you can check that out when you talk about it. So, Jeff, a year ago and before, if this was our provisional budget that we're looking at, and I keep for great work you do, this kind of thing, what are we looking at for a tax increase? And I know it's early days and we're not done, but what does that look like?
2% is what we have right now, Councillor.
Yeah, okay, that's
what
great.
we budgeted.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's thinking and hoping to hear. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to have a rate for 10 minutes.
Thank you. All in favor?
I was trying to.
Any other questions? Are you done?
Session? Or, sorry, I motion to come back in session. Wow.
So we're done with the budget. Thank you so much, Jeff, for your presentation, and it's a better story on the operational side than I was expecting, so thank you.
Didn't know what you were expecting.
Well, I was looking at the bottom line and thinking, oh, how bad.
That's a little fair. Yeah.
So, let me see the reports. Correspondence. Gary Sandberg, Municipal. So that is an interesting document. If you look at the way Cardston is faring as a municipality and as on a financial kind of spectrum, you would see we fare very well in comparison of other southern Alberta towns. Our debt level is very manageable, and we have a little bit of margin here to function. So it's worth looking at it really on a specific document. And that's about it, unless you have questions for administration. Councillor Kenny?